I think that this generation now is a little lost. And I'm not a generation, smackdown guy. I have millennials as children, but I think that they're lost. And I want to share with them how an average guy with just a little bit of optimism and a lot of grit can find happiness and purpose. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I'm a loser, right? I mean,
No.
I should have been a loser. But a couple people came along and pulled my ass out. And so I want to share that with people.
Welcome, gurus and game changers. We are so excited today because on the show, we have one of my personal gurus, Ed Doherty.
Hi.
He's the founder of 1 Degree Coaching, but he has a long career, even though he's so young. And he started out in the restaurant business, right?
Yes.
Capitol Grill, Union Trust Steakhouse.
Yes.
And then you went director of ops of Saxby's. And now you have the founder of 1 Degree Coaching.
Yes.
So, want to tell me a little bit about yourself and about 1 Degree Coaching, and then I'm going to
Sure.
reel it back to the family life.
You got it. So 1 Degree Coaching was born out of hospitality, but it works everywhere. It's really about leadership and connecting people in a 1 degree relationship. And it was a journey I learned in the tough streets of restaurant business. So I was a chef for 20-some years, and chefs are lovely people. And they
Are you being sarcastic?
Yes. Well, when I started out in the 1970s, that's how young I am, it was a very different dynamic. And the chef, chief, the whole structure of the restaurant chef world comes from Escoffier, and Escoffier was a military guy. So he created a military structure in the kitchen. And it was wonderful because it added order and sanitation and those kinds of things, but it also created can I use the A word?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Created a bunch of assholes. So I consider myself a reformed asshole.
Right.
And so the journey along the way, I just wanted to build happy, high-performing teams. That was my goal. And I just happened to be a chef. And I didn't know that until later. But I realized my behavior did not sync up to my why and what I wanted to accomplish.
What's an example of that kind of behavior?
It's just pure dominance. Shut up. I'm the only
You're the
voice
king.
here. I'm the king.
Yeah.
It's a fiefdom.
Right.
And it's fun for a while, but it doesn't work with human beings over the long term. So I wanted to build these long-term relationships. People would come and go. I had some notoriety as a chef in the 80s and the early 90s, so people would hang out with me long enough to get their resume.
Right.
But they really didn't like me. So I looked in the mirror one day and I said, you're an asshole, dude. And, if you really want to accomplish your overarching goal, you need to change the way you navigate the planet. So I started studying human nature.
But what was that inciting moment? Like what made you look at the mirror and say,
Well, two
dude,
things.
you're an asshole?
Two things. One, I usually don't like to talk about this, but I was an alcoholic. So I had a come to the universe conversation with myself. I quit drinking and stopped a lot of stuff and just started this journey of self-discovery. And so during this getting sober, I was in the program, as they say, the 12-step program, and there was this orderly way of digging yourself out of darkness. And so the program, the 12-step program, I was like, wow, this could probably be applied to anything.
Yeah.
And I started to think about how not only I could evolve, but how I could evolve the workplace that I was in, which was, pretty rough.
So, for those people, there's listeners out there who have been in that same exact situation, or maybe they're even there now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take that first step? Do you just stay yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to do this? Do you get help? Do you have your own guru, your own person who kind of guides you along that way? Or how can we help
it's a great
people who
question.
need that?
Well, unfortunately, statistically, it's not good. You know, as far as the sobriety thing is concerned, I am very lucky to have quit and never relapsed or anything like that. So when it comes to sobriety, what I think is that step is that you fear loss.
Okay.
It's not like I am going to change. I'm going to be a better man. You know, it
Yeah,
was more. I am going to lose my life. I'm going to lose I already lost one wife. So I had a girlfriend. She was going to leave me. Things weren't good.
Right.
I didn't ever have a problem at work because I didn't drink at work, but it was fear of loss. So I did it selfishly. And then, you know, in the program, you have somebody called a sponsor,
Right.
and they're your guru. And
Okay.
they take you through the steps. So,
And that person was probably pretty important to you.
yeah, he was. You know, the funny thing is, if I saw him on the street, I probably would walk the other way.
Wow.
That's the program because
Right. You're supposed to be anonymous. Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, he's not the kind of person I would hang out with.
Interesting.
Because I was a snob, right? So,
Wow.
I was a chef.
You mean before you went into the program, you would?
Yeah,
know-
I was
yeah.
egomaniac
Yeah.
with an inferiority complex. So Tommy G, he not only was he a stroke victim and he was much older than me, but it made me realize that with the way people look and where they come from is not what's happening here, right? So he taught me a lot, and he tricked me into getting better.
How do you say?
That's amazing.
What's
Yeah,
that?
why do you say tricked you into it?
Oh, he would call me up and say, Ed, I really got to get to a meeting. And I didn't want to go to one. You know, you go to these meetings to stay sober. And I'd be like, Tommy, I'm busy. I got stuff going. He goes, oh, if you don't pick me up, I might drink. And I was like, oh my God, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And I'd go and pick him up. He didn't. He was
No.
like sober for 30 years, you know? And he would get my ass to the
Yeah.
meeting, and then I started talking to people. I was like, boy, he's like, he does that to everybody. And so,
Latest
you know,
victim.
he really, you know,
That's
him and
amazing.
several other people.
Thank you, Tommy.
Intervened.
Thank you for helping me
Yeah.
find Ed in my life. Yeah. Yeah.
I've had several interventions in my life where people kind of saw me and said, "This kid's better than that," and
Wow.
kind of pulled me out.
So did that happen when you were young as well?
Yeah, I had a pretty. My childhood was a little. There wasn't a lot of safety and belonging in my childhood, so I had an older brother who was adopted, and he wasn't well, and he was violent, and so I was his object.
punching bag?
Exactly.
Aw.
So I flunked out of high school. I
Wow.
was involved with, you know, all the things that kids in the 70s were involved with.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
This professor, I would sleep in the back of the room. And one day he grabbed me and he said, I want to show you something. He marched me across the hall, and it was this dingy little theater. And it was dirty and it was dusty and it was in disrepair. And he said, what do you think of this? I said, I think this place needs help. And I said, yeah, it needs somebody to love, and so do you.
Oh my God.
I still get emotional.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get emotional.
Yeah. So little did he know, or maybe he did, I was in theater remember the Valley Forge Music Fair? I don't know if everybody
Yeah, of
remembers.
course.
Well, I lived across the street from the Camden County Music Fair. So in the summer, I worked summer stock theater with, like, you know, real famous people, you know, like
Wow.
from New York and Hollywood. And it was what Hollywood people and Broadway people did during the summer back in those days. And they'd be in these little theaters. So I already had a theater background. He walked me in here and he said, this place needs you. You need it.
How do you think he knew?
I don't know. It's one of those weird things. So I turn around, he's gone. And I'm walking.
What?
I'm walking around.
Was
this
he
place.
real?
Yeah. So I walked around this place, and there hadn't been a show there in years. And like the apathy of the 60s just kind of killed, you know, let's do Broadway plays, you know, it just.
Like no one wanted to do anything.
Nobody
right?
wanted to do
Yeah, they just
that.
want to smoke pot and chill and
and protest.
have sex and protest.
Yeah, free love.
Sounds fun.
So I spent weeks cleaning up this place, throwing out the old sets, you know, just changing the lighting. Like, I knew how to do all that stuff. And then a few months later, we put on our first show.
So what, like, knowing what you know now, like, what do you think that lesson was? Like, what did he instill in you right then?
Belonging.
Okay.
A sense of purpose. I didn't have any.
Purpose.
You know, I was lost. I really was. And funny thing is, a year later, I was a student government president. I'd cut all my hair off. I was in Phi Theta Kappa, which is the Phi Beta Kappa of 2-year schools, and it was crazy.
How much of that experience do you carry with you when you're working with teams?
It's my entire why. It's what I want. I was a lost soul who found purpose, and I knew that, people always go, "Oh no, don't say that," but I knew I was average. I was kind of born with this optimistic outlook that I'd really got dark at that time, and Lewis Wells saved me. But I was born with optimism, and that has always been fascinating for me. That even though I knew I was like average IQ and all that stuff, I just had this a bright outlook. My father always told me I had my head in head in the clouds, and all that stuff. That I was easily I was just naive. But that naivete and optimism is the thing that really became what I am trying to help other people.
Amen.
That was your fuel.
Amen.
Right? Yeah.
Well, how did you get into cooking?
Well, I transferred to the University of Delaware from Wesley, and then I got into. My mother was a teacher, so I didn't know what to do, and I was like, I'll be a teacher. Meanwhile, I'd always worked in restaurants, and when the summer stock theater was down, I worked in restaurants, and I kind of stunk at it.
What?
I was a dishwasher, and I was okay, and then I was a line cook, and I was really bad, and but it was always fun because it was like pirate ships. Like if you ever worked in a restaurant, they're literally, especially in the 70s and 80s, it was a pirate ship. With just crazy.
What do you mean? It was a pirate ship? You mean like just the
people drinking
bodiness
and smoking and doing lines and just, and it was work, and everybody was having fun, and you'd work 12 hours and you'd sweat and curse and
bond.
It was a pirate ship. And there was a head pirate, and that was the chef, and I was like, I like that. That's kind of cool. So when I was graduating, I realized I didn't want to be a third grade teacher, and I wanted to. I think I want to do this. So one day, I was working at the Blue and Gold Club, which was the University of Delaware's faculty alumni club, and there was this chef there named Bill, and Bill was a drunk, and Bill would come in and he would start drinking, and he'd pass out in the Rathskeller in the basement, and so I was like, wow. So I got my first offer to be a teacher in the Wilmington School District for like $13,000 a year. This is 1978, 9. And so I walked up to Bill one day, and he was like, he was decorating a cake, and he was like, this is gross, but he was like flop sweating on it because he was so hungover, and he's like trying to pipe. I'm like, oh my God. So I said, hey, Bill, this a question for you. Do you mind if I ask you a personal question? What do you make a year? And he was like, I make $30,000 a year. And I was like, for drinking all day?
Easy choice,
I can
right?
do that.
Third grade or 30,000?
Yeah, it was that. So that's how I made my career decision.
Yeah.
And then I found this little place called Goodfellows in Newark, Delaware, and this woman named Kathy Reese. Turned out she was like an up and coming chef, but I just wandered in there. And I was
going to say, she sounds familiar, Kathy Reese.
Yeah, she was the first woman on the cover of Food and Wine magazine when they did the top 10. Yeah. So here I was, she did all the cooking, and I would put parsley on the plate, I'd make the rolls, and I thought I was like really cool. And, here comes George Perrier, he's hanging out there. Pierre Frané, people won't remember him maybe, but he was the 60-minute gourmet for the New York Times. Craig Claiborne, who was the New York Times food critic for years back in the 70s and the 80s. These guys were like the top, guys back then. And they were showing up there, and I just happened to be there.
Why were they showing up? Just
because of her.
Wow.
She was an enfant terrible. She was this amazing young upstart young woman chef, and she got tons of attention. And I was there along for the ride.
Wow.
But
did she take you under her wing, or how did she?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was delusional. I thought I was actually her, so it's all part of being a narcissist, by the way. But
or confident.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more delusion than anything
You're
else.
hard on yourself.
No, I'm just honest.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided to go off on my own. I wanted to go to Philadelphia and make my name. And I went to Philadelphia and I applied to this place called La Terrasse in West Philadelphia. And at the time, it was one of a handful of really good restaurants in 1980 in Philadelphia. There was Frog, La Terrasse, there was Lebec, but it was over in where Vetri is now. It was a very small restaurant community. And I went in there and applied, and I interviewed, this woman interviewed me by the name of Judy Wicks, White Dog Cafe.
Wow.
And she was the manager at the time. And I went in there and I was like, oh yeah, I can do this and do that. I was putting parsley on a plate. I had no clue.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
was thrown into this kitchen and I had no idea what I was doing. Like I realized in like one moment, like, what did I do? Any parsley I could put on a plate?
No, come on. You knew more than that.
Oh, I did not.
Seriously?
I knew some. I was really not good.
So what'd you do?
Well, because it was 1980 and you can get away with that crap, I had a copy. I had a copy of Julia Child's The Art of French Cooking. I put it in my locker, and every time the chef would go make some hollandaise, I'd be like, I wonder what that is. I swear to God.
No way.
I would go downstairs.
I love it.
And I go upstairs, and he was like, no, not like that. What are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry. This is what we did at the last place. And I just lied
Meaning
myself
my
through.
locker.
Wow. You faked it till you maked it.
Yeah, and 2.5 years later, I was the executive chef. I'm not kidding.
So you went in as as a line chef, or how did
Line
you?
cook, yeah.
Line cook.
Yeah. And then it was this optimistic energy that I had. There was guys coming in from Culinary Institute. There were people there that had much more talent than me and experience, but I just kept going to these leadership positions because of my attitude, basically.
So you weren't an asshole then?
Well, I was. I was told by several people working with me that I was a good guy, but maybe there's outside of work when I was drinking. But for the most part, no, I was not. I just modeled, what I had
What
seen.
you saw, right.
And then, Judy, who was amazing, Judy Wicks is incredible, one of my great mentors. She taught me culture. She taught me what actually culture was. She sent me to Paris. Like, this is the kind of stuff they would do back then. Like, all expense paid. I went to Paris and studied at La Rerun. So I really experienced some wonderful assholes there, like these real Michelin star chefs, that
Right.
worked in this place. Came back to La Terrasse and...
So then you went from there to Capitol Grill.
no,
No.
there's years in between.
Okay.
I went to a place called London Restaurant, and then I realized, like, Peter was like one of my great drinking buddies. Peter Coughlin, he was a great guy. Two Irishmen. And I realized if I didn't get out of there, I was going to die because,
Yeah.
So
Peter was a great drinking buddy.
that's about when I got sober, and
Yeah.
I went and worked at. I actually got out of the business for a little bit, but I was in my early part of my journey for sobriety, and I was told that I couldn't work in restaurants anymore by the AA people.
Really?
Can't be around booze.
Yeah.
And BYOBs were a thing, right? At least
Yeah.
high-end ones back then. And then luckily another person intervened, and this guy who was listening to these people tell me, you got to get out of the restaurant business. Like, I guess I'll go cut lawns or something. I was really I wanted to get sober. So in AA, you just have to listen to what they say.
Sure.
And so I was a good student there. And this guy pulled me aside and said, don't listen to them. I was like, what? He said, just what you want to do is just whatever you, with all your might, pray that when you're at work, that alcohol is just a tool. When you're flambeing, it's just a tool. That's all it is. It's a knife, it's a cleaver, it's just another tool. And just ask God, to take away the thoughts that you want to drink that stuff. And I'm not a religious person, I'm spiritual, not religious, so I did that. But it was the intention of it. So I had turned down a job at this huge, wonderful restaurant, told them I was an alcoholic, and I couldn't take the job. And the guy called me back a few days later after I turned the job down. And he said, I don't know why I'm doing this, because I certainly don't want to hire an alcoholic, but I see something in you. And his name was Tony Chagonis, and he brought me into the place, and that was phenomenal. That was an amazing experience. So Greenbrier, that place was incredible. I learned how to run really big restaurants. And then I decided, then he sold the restaurant. And then I was brokenhearted because he sold the restaurant. And then I got a phone call this is interesting. I got a phone call from this person who said that they saw my resume and they wanted to talk to me. And I was so naive because I'd only worked in restaurants for about 15 years and I didn't know what the outside world was about. It was a multi-level marketing place. It was called Primerica.
Okay.
And they sold insurance, and it was like this whole pyramid thing.
Yeah,
But I didn't know, so I went in there, and I'm like, "Oh, this is cool! Wow, I could become an insurance salesman." You know, and I had no clue that it was like that. But what I learned there was a lot more about human nature than I ever learned before. People would do anything to be part of something where they could feel special, and that was an amazing experience. I almost lost my home. You know, I'm almost like, you know, you don't make money in these things.
Wow.
But I learned that people, if you get them excited about something,
It's ego.
and they feel like they're part of this like cult. It was like a cult, right? And so I learned the power of cult. And I was like, oh, so that was another amazing lesson. And then I went back to the restaurant business. I took a little bit of AA, a little bit of what they were doing in this cult, and I said, what are the actual mechanisms where human beings will be engaged? They'll actually give their heart and soul to something, and it's not about money. And so I started exploring that and back in the restaurant world. And so I was a chef at 2 more restaurants. The last one was La Campagna, which was a renowned French provincial restaurant, and it's like a top 20 gourmet magazine joint. Yeah, and then the whole leadership thing just started calling me too much, and then I started to codify in my own mind, studying these different folks that had these understandings of human nature. How do you build a happy, high-performing team? How do you build a great workplace where everybody's like into it and everybody's engaged? And so I started that journey.
Did you experience both ends of that spectrum? You were on a high engaged, love your job team, all the way to the magic is gone.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've worked in horrendous teams where there is no magic, and it's horrible. so I.
There's a lot. Sometimes there's more learning in that.
Well, failure is the
right.
teacher.
Because I've often said you can learn to be a better manager of people more from watching bad managers than just trying to emulate a good manager.
Absolutely.
That's that person's style to be a good manager, but you can see, wow, I will not do that.
Yeah.
Or that's a toxic place to be.
Yeah.
And I know you focus a lot in your company on disengagement,
Yes,
right? Your
that's
words,
right.
It's, I think you said 75% of people are disengaged. It's $500 billion
Get it
in
somewhere.
productivity. Half the people are looking for jobs. We all believe that, right?
Right.
Because many of us feel disengaged from certainly 9 to 5, and not just corporate, but
Right.
retail, industrial, because I think there's a lack of purpose.
Right.
It's just go in, punch the clock, do my job, and go home.
Exactly.
And there's no vision of a higher
Yes,
purpose.
that's right.
So how do you get people engaged?
Well, first you have to understand that there's a biology behind it. There's not philosophy. It's biology. Like human beings are purpose maximizers. Like we are absolutely built. Our brains are wired to be tribal, to be part of something that's bigger than us, and that we can feel that feeling, that safety and belonging in that space. So you have to understand the science behind it. And once you kind of have a handle on that, because it's counterintuitive, all of it is a paradox. It's the complete opposite of what comes natural, because natural leadership, as I call it, with quotes, is domination. It's, do what I say or else, which was the model up until very recently. And thanks to COVID and this newer generation, it's being all blown up. And it is backwards and broken, but people bought into it before because the economics were different. Meaning, like I think about my dad, he worked for the same company for 40 some years.
Right.
It's over. So everybody now doesn't have that. They're not going to go to a business and they're going to be taken care of for their whole life. But that used to be the American way. So because of the new economy, because of the new era workplace, leaders have to learn new skills, period. And that's what 1 Degree is about. It's teaching these new skills that don't really make sense at first, and so that people will give you permission to be their leader or mentor. People will not do anything They will not engage in anything that they don't want to do.
Yeah. So these are soft skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just itemize, list a couple of the skills that you think are the most important that people need in order to be successful as a manager, successful as in their own career. What are those skills right now?
Yeah, I used to be like, care about people, really care. Like, actually, I dared to say the word love recently. Love people, like try to have that level of empathy, understand human nature, and then take responsibility. And so I've kind of changed the first two out, and it's vulnerability now.
Okay.
It's like being open to just feeling it, and vulnerability is actually a superpower, and a lot of people don't understand what vulnerability is, but it's actually being authentic. It's like just being able to just be your freaking self. And if you're, if your drool is showing and, you're not always perfect, people absolutely love that. They love authenticity. Just be vulnerable to that. And then self-awareness, like just really go on a journey to figure out like what's driving you. Like most people go through life and don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So they can't find purpose. And then responsibility, like take responsibility for your self-awareness and and then share that with others. If it's like a 3.5 is a share with others. So that's my new code.
So all those soft skills that self-awareness, all that you just discussed, do you find that needs to be developed in the manager more than the teammate or the person that reports to them? Like what person? I'm probably not asking this
No, you're
properly.
asking a great question.
Then I'll stop right there.
Yes, so human beings need vision. They need a purpose, right, to follow. So like at Saxby's, what we developed, Saxby was like make life better. It has nothing to do with coffee. People don't care about what you do. They care about why you do it. So that's biology, right? If you look at Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle and look at that stuff, folks that know that, it turns out that, we are driven by this by our feelings, and the part of our brain that actually makes all of our decisions for us has no language capacity. So it's all very tribal, and it's all very like, in nanoseconds, people decide whether they trust you or not. And then the neocortex, which is our human brain, justifies the things that we do. But most people go through life and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They don't know. They just get up every morning and they are driven by their impulses. So what you have to understand is if you give people a vision and you give them some purpose, and it's yours, and they say, well, you know what, I kind of like that. We're not trying to build cults here. We want to build culture, right? The difference between a cult and culture is cults are completely overlapped and they absorb the person. This is just somebody touching your belief system and saying, you know what, I kind of believe that too, and I think I want to hang out with you guys for a while. Okay. And that creates loyalty. And so you have a leader, and he's got vision, and he's got a set of values, which is how you do.
Or she.
What's that? Or she.
Or
I'm
she.
sorry. You're right.
He or she.
They.
Them.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age. But in between the vision, the leader, the values that are created by some wonderful person is the team on the other side. But in between them is the manager. And the biggest disconnect that I have to work with is got this wonderful person who has this great idea, this great vision for what life could be and what we could do. He finds some people who believe too, and he builds a little tribe, and then they plunk a manager down in between them. And if that manager is not aligned, does not know how to be a leader, and does not reflect the true vision and values of the organization and the founder, dysfunction. Not only dysfunction, I always say it's worse to have a codified culture than to have it and not actually execute it properly. It really messes people up.
So you're saying if the leader is saying, okay, here's my vision, here's my mission, and they hear this from the leader, and then the manager isn't translating it,
Right.
It's worse for the team because they they see what the leader's trying to do, but they also see that the manager's not helping or hindering that, and it's causes crumble.
It causes total disillusion and then disengagement.
Right.
That's the biggest problem. Gallup wrote a book a few years ago called "It's the Manager," and they should have said "It's the Manager, stupid," because this happens all the time.
Wow.
We got this great idea, and the team's like, "We believe," and then this person comes and says, "All right, you guys, I'm in charge here, and this is the way it's going to go," and they don't know how to connect the 1 degree connection. That's why 1 degree. Mm-hmm. The 1 degree connection between the vision and the values and the goals of the company and everybody in the organization. And the manager, so there's no leadership training out there in most mid-sized companies, right? Especially small companies. We can't afford that. But that's the thing that messes up all the profits and all the sales growth. Yeah. And I'm just trying to get the word out that you got to take time to do that.
Yeah.
Enlightened leadership.
Because too often you're taking the person who is best at their job, the A player at their job, they become the manager. Mm-hmm. And they're often a B or a C player in that new role.
Right.
Right, when they should have just been left in their role.
Yeah, true.
And you get the A
well, they might be
productivity
asking.
out of that
They
person.
might be asking.
They
They
might
might be
be,
like,
but-
hey, I want more responsibility. I want, and you want to give those people, if you're a good leader.
Sure. Well, you want a career path and all that.
Career
but
paths. And
a lot of times these people are dominant, right? That's how they fight their
They're
way
the most
through.
vocal.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Can this go the other way too, right? So I think, I ran a company and you and I talked quite a bit about it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I think back on, the things I probably didn't do well, there's a lot of beating up of yourself, when there's no more company. But one of the things I think I went the other way. I went too vulnerable, too authentic, too permissive in some senses.
Great
but that's
question.
just my personality. So how do you, if you're the other side of the coin, and I just want everyone to love, like I loved everybody, they're all my friends, and I wanted to, like I thought, but that wasn't really the way to go either.
Yeah, I learned that from Judy Wicks. Like she had this amazing balance of like she could be an absolute buffoon, and have fun. And I'm not saying that you were a buffoon.
Yeah, I was kind of a buffoon.
Yeah. No, but I mean, one time they made her a birthday cake and she sat on it. I mean, it was fantastic. The pastry chef was pissed, but she taught me the center of the 1 degree methodology that I didn't figure out for like 20 years later. But she could connect, and you have to connect first. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to do that. Because if you can't connect with people, then there's no way they're going to follow you, especially in today's marketplace. Like, I've been doing this stuff for like 15 years now, and COVID and the Great Resignation
Changed everything, right?
It accelerated, and then the generational values that came up. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because that's really important to talk about. But you got to connect first. So you have managers who are connectors, and everyone loves them, right? But people also need direction. They need order and they need discipline. So it's this balancing act, and this is one of the methodologies or techniques I teach leaders, especially newer leaders. Please connect, but now I got to teach you how to direct. How do you tell people what to do? And it's balancing. Connect first, but make sure you direct. And I'll go into an organization and I'll look around. I'll just say which ones are the connectors and which ones are the directors. And the directors are those go-getter, tough bosses, and then the connectors are like, but I want everybody to be happy, right? And I teach this balancing act between the two, and that's
and you do that via the predictive index now? Because I saw that in your...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is super cool. I don't know. You don't need to go into full detail about it.
Well,
but
Predictive Index is a talent optimization platform that helps people create self-awareness and then understanding others, because human beings are wired in protective mode. So we're, unless you're like a real optimist like you and me, a lot of people are like, and then they can't see themselves. So the Predictive Index allows you to see what drives you. There's these 4 factors, and it's dominance, extroversion, patience, and formality, developed completely for the workplace. And I'm a maverick, by the way. You get a profile.
I don't remember what I am. I know I took it.
Yeah.
I'm not a maverick, though.
No, you're probably more like an altruist or something.
No, there's another one. What are they? Do you know? What are the?
No,
So there's a Maverick.
17 of them.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah. Well, you're probably were you a promoter?
Yes, I think I'm a promoter.
Yeah.
about right.
Promoters love, they're very collaborative.
Yes.
And they're amazing. And that was perfect, right? But Mavericks are they're out of the box thinkers. They're creative, innovative, and they never give up. That's like what a Maverick is. They're like, whoosh. But anyway, the predictive index allows me now to get to that self-awareness with the leader fast. Because if you have a dominant leader who is not collaborative and moves fast, or he or she or they, and they aren't into details, which a lot of people who are in innovation aren't into details, by the way, they can easily not be great leaders. They've gotten there by their willpower, to your point, Mark, and then they have to create this whole other. So when they become aware of the things that are messing them up, and it's done in a way through the predictive index, it's not judgmental. It's who you are. There's no good or bad. It's just, this is who you are. And then they look at other people's patterns. It's a pattern that's formed by these 4 factors, and they can go, oh my God, I need to let this person be more collaborative. I'm like dominating them. Yes, you do. I'm like driving this person crazy because I just never stop talking, and they're more introspective. That's right. I've moved too fast. I got to slow down. Yeah. I break the rules all the time, and it's making my accountant crazy. Yeah, when you're with him, you should probably not do that. And it just creates this, instead of it being like, you're an asshole and I'm not, it's like, I'm okay, you're okay, and this is how. But how can we treat each other better at work through the predictive index?
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
I
loved it too. It was really fun.
Love it.
And then you can also look at one of your coworkers and be like, oh, they're a promoter, or oh, they're a Maverick, or oh.
Right.
And you understand them more in sort of like a third party way versus like, oh, that's Ted.
Yeah.
And he's, just being a pain.
That's
or
right.
whatever.
Ted is Ted.
Ted is Ted.
As long as Ted's not,
And we're not really talking about the real Ted, whatever the Ted
No,
is.
I know.
This is the fake Ted.
Yeah, I usually use Bob.
Bob, John, Mary.
Yeah. As long as they're good people,
Do you
they're
know,
living
like-
within the values.
So I'm sorry, do you have something?
No, go ahead.
So it's so interesting, right? Like I keep thinking
like
of
this.
questions, but I don't want to.
Yeah. No.
I was going to say, is there an example of someone that you've helped along the way? Like, why did they come to you? You don't have to name names, but why did they come to you? And, like, how did you take them from wherever they were, they came to you, to success? Like, what do you have?
Question.
You don't want me to talk about you?
You can.
No.
I suppose. I don't know.
No.
It's going to be a success story.
So it is. I see you smiling. I see you happy, and I'm very happy.
Now.
I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you're happy. I have a dozen clients, companies mostly, and within those organizations are dozens of people that I interact with every day, and I'm helping them to evolve into a happy place for them at work. And so, I guess an example, I think a great example is Nick Bayer.
Yeah.
Nick, when I met Nick, we were both not in a great place. We both had the same partner in 2 different enterprises.
Nick, by the way, for listeners, is the CEO of Saxby's in Philadelphia.
And boy, he has evolved and the company's evolved. I mean, mind-blowing it's evolved. It's now an experiential learning platform for students that just happens to be a coffee company. Right. So when I met Nick, he was with this person who wanted a franchise, and Nick just wanted to build community. And one day I was about to open this big steakhouse, and I was talking to my team, because I was a real believer even back then, about core values and building these value systems where people can understand the kind of behavior that we want, how a team should behave on its best day. It's an ideal. It's not, we don't want people to be perfect. Just why don't we just respect each other, and why don't we have some integrity and that kind of stuff? Let's work on that. So I was giving a speech or a talk to my team about core values, and his dad walked by the door because we were in this big office.
Nick Bayer's dad?
Yeah, Nick's dad. They used to work.
Okay.
The parents would work with him. And he was new to Philadelphia. He was, I think, in Atlanta before that. And I just remember this guy like backing up and standing at the door and like listening and then running away. And I was like, and he went and found Nick, and he said, Nick, you got to hear this guy. I think he's what you need. You talk like this all the time. And Nick and I got together and we talked and we interacted. And he started to understand, like, I've got to live by my belief system, not by money or franchising. And franchising is like, it can be good, but not a big fan. It's the overlord taking all the cream off the top and you get the scraps.
Right.
And that's why sometimes franchises aren't great. So he was like, I don't want to franchise anymore. So he got out of that and we worked together on and off. We built his value system and his culture. He had already had, I think, Make Life Better. Over the years, on and off, we've worked together. And I went back in a few years ago and redid the value system because he now had a vision that he wanted to create an experiential learning cafe in universities all around the country where young people would learn to be leaders in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
And so I helped him work on all that kind of cultural leadership stuff. And I watched him, because he wanted it
Right.
to evolve. It was already there. It's just that he was in a construct that, I got to make money. I've got to make this business successful. And now, look at him.
So you're saying that leaders shouldn't focus on making money, per se?
There was a study done called Good to Great.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written in the late 90s when it was all about making money, right? And it turned everything upside down. And it turned out it was the opposite of what everybody else was doing. This is the theme, right? Because the way our brains are structured, because the thing that really matters doesn't have language capacity, the louder voice of logic and materialism drowns out the voice of purpose and goodness. So we default to that. So yeah, making money will happen if you look at the Good to Great study. If you find enlightened leadership, servant leadership, whatever you want to call it, you find true believers, you build a culture where everybody's focused on this one wonderful idea. You face the brutal facts, but you don't give up hope, so you have awareness, and then the money comes. It's very interesting. When he aligned his vision of the world to his business, and it took years, by the way, it doesn't happen overnight. He is now, I was emailing him the other day, and he said, we still stay in contact, and he just did this amazing capital raise, right? Like the money came, and they're going to expand even more.
Wow.
And it before it was like when they were trying to force it, it wasn't happening. So you got to line up the chakras. Success is lining up the chakras of enlightened leadership, team and a culture that believes, having a very focused platform, which they call the hedgehog. What are you passionate about? What can you be great at? And then what drives your economic engine? Those three things have to stay aligned. And when you line those chakras up, it doesn't always happen, and then you can't quit. You just can't, because you never know. Like, I've seen so many people quit before success.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
What? Let's take you back to the restaurant world. You valued the power. You valued the position. What do you value now? What is the most important as you define your personal success? What do you value most?
I want to share. I think that this generation now is a little lost. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a generation, smackdown guy. I have millennials as children, but I think that they're lost. And I want to share with them how an average guy with just a little bit of optimism and a lot of grit can find happiness and purpose. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I'm a loser, right? I
No.
mean, I should have been a loser, but a couple of people came along and pulled my ass out, and so I want to share that with people.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening now, the thing that's really driving me, if I'm answering your question properly, Mark, and tell me if I'm not, as you can tell, I can easily go off the rails. There's these three things that you need to be happy at work, and they're purpose, a transcendent purpose that work matters. And the new generation has that absolutely right. They're the first generation that stood up and said, we're not just going to do freaking work. We want purpose. Boom. So they're so right about that. And the next thing you need is a sense of mastery. You got to be good at something. Like everybody in this room is good at something, right? And yeah, you are. I know you. And that sense of mastery gives you real sense of security and gives you identity, and that's real value. And then the next thing that people need to be happy at work is autonomy. They want to be self-directed. They don't want to be micromanaged. They want to be free. So the new generation wants purpose and they want autonomy. That's the work at home, work-life balance, which is, by the way, a lie that's been sold to a lot of people. Work-life balance doesn't exist. Thank you. But the mastery part's getting lost because what's happening is that people are wandering from job to job to job, and they're never getting mastery. So my 20 years in the restaurant business, 35 years, 25 as a chef, and then as a manager and owner and COO and all that stuff, I got deep mastery. So that bought me my autonomy. You cannot become autonomous if you're not good at something. So I'm trying to get the word out that, I know that you find a place where the culture's right. Don't worry so much about making the money. Not if you're young. It'll come. And find a place, find a tribe to hang out with, but get good at something. And I know that sounds very like baby boomer, but it's I just see it over and over again now. So
But is there an opportunity to do that these days? Like
there is.
Okay.
Yeah.
How?
There's lots of places that need people, and they're trying to change. The workplace, COVID forced the workplace to wake up and to change the way that they build their workplaces and the way they treat their people and the opportunities that they give and career path. The whole thing is a revolution happening right now. And so it's not happening fast enough for me sometimes, but that's what I do. But if you can build a better workplace, and then someplace people can feel safe and they feel like they're growing and they have that opportunity. But I'm just trying to get out the word, like stay somewhere for a year and a half. Don't jump around and around because you'll always go into someplace and you'll never get autonomy, and you'll never get that next thing because you never learned.
You have to always rely on somebody else. You always will have to collaborate unless you learn.
You'll be micromanaged too.
Something in and out. Yeah.
This person doesn't know what they're doing. And
Right.
So I'm going to have to
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. I can't believe we're almost at an hour.
That's
And
crazy. Really? Wow.
Yeah, and so normally what we do is do like a couple lightning round, just
Sure.
a few little fun questions,
Oh, boy.
to get us out of the deep. And and then I want you to tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Oh, okay.
And how to grow your business and what you really want.
Okay.
In the
Thank
future.
you.
Yeah, no, that's one of our things. But okay, what's on your bedside table right now?
I'm reading Enlightened Leadership by Matt Pepsel. He's a PI guy, and it's always about leadership. There's a book about astronomy
Oh,
that I'm reading as well.
why?
And I'm fascinated by the universe,
stars and the universe.
and stuff. And then, oh my gosh, I'm having trouble. I'm reading this book and I can't remember the title. It's about hospitality. It's written, oh my God. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Oh,
Yes, it's about a restaurant in New York that was the number one restaurant in the world, and how they did hospitality so outrageously that they created a whole ecosystem out of it.
damn, that's
It's
cool.
going the extra mile.
Very, very cool. And then one thing, this is my favorite question. Do you have any
Which one?
to add
I
to?
have one.
Okay, go ahead. You ask first, then I'll ask this one last.
So you've called yourself some terrible things.
Oops.
In this, you called yourself a loser. You called yourself an asshole. I just want you to give us 2 or 3 compliments of yourself.
Oh, good
What are you
one.
good at?
Good one, Mark.
What do you? Even in one words, single word.
I guess gritty is one. I'm learning to be empathetic. Teacher, motivator.
Clearly humble.
Yeah.
Very humble. We
Yes.
should have had a truth teller with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, to pull out
Somebody
the
who would, speak
humbleness.
the
Actually,
truth.
I could probably talk to how amazing you are.
Yeah.
But I don't want to embarrass you.
No,
You're
it's
a guru.
okay. Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
So then just piggybacking on that one, I love that, Mark. That was an awesome question because you are sort of self-deprecating, like to the max.
Yeah. Am I?
What's one thing that now no one knows about you that you can break on this podcast?
Wow. I've never been asked that question.
There are very few people.
I guess because I'm such
circle.
an extrovert and I'm so out there, I don't know if there's much I haven't told. I wrote about this in my. I used to have a very active imagination, and I used to pretend like I was a time traveler
Whoa.
up into my 20s.
Wait, tell me about that.
Yeah, I would do this game where I started as a child because an amazing dream machine that I still have. I have these incredibly vivid dreams. Sorry, piano. And I would sit down with like you folks, and I'd close my eyes, and I'd start to imagine, and I would come in, and I didn't know who you were, even if you were my best friends, or where I was, or what year it was, and I would have to figure out what my relationship was with you, who I was in this thing that I landed in, because I would land in another body.
That sounds actually like a lot of fun.
And I would
fun mental exercise.
I would do this wild game, and my friends, would be not knowing I was doing this, and
Whoa.
I would start asking them questions about themselves in a way that they didn't. It was this, and I kept doing it into my 20s,
And no one
I
knew
was-
that- no one
I
knew.
was so embarrassed by it, but.
Why? Why was that embarrassing?
Because that's some 5-year-olds do, right? So
Magical thing.
But I just had this overact, and I'd get bored easily. So that would, I'd be with my friends, and they'd be like, "Hey, man, you want to smoke another joint?" And I'd be like, "No, I just want to imagine and play." And
Then you go
create
into this time
universe."
travel machine and
Yeah.
show up as
as who I didn't know who
a
I was.
different skin Ed.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
know
sick.
Who is this?
You know what?
person
We should
and
write a
what am I-
movie about that.
It's really cool.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I love that. And
So that's
that
something I've
almost a
never
form
told
of like
anybody.
dissociation, really. Like, maybe you just felt like not really being here.
Or maybe I didn't want to be me.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Sorry,
There's
I'm
so much more there.
self-deprecating. No.
What'd you say?
I didn't realize how self-deprecating I am, but I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when you're an egomaniac narcissist and you're reformed,
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go back to that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
So how can people get in touch with you, learn about you,
Mm-hmm.
work with you? And which channel do you want them to reach out to?
Yeah, so I wish I was better on social media, but it's 1 Degree Coaching, and so I have a website, and in that website there's a lot of resources. There's ways to contact me. It's www.onedegreecoaching.com. I write a weekly blog that I'm really passionate
love it.
about, Ed's Notes, and you can go on the website and sign up for that. Please do that. And I share every Sunday morning. I share some thoughts about the world, leadership, and maybe a little bit about myself, but mostly about building happy, high-performing workplaces and in this new era that we're in.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has
Thank
been
you.
great.
Thanks so
Ed.
This
much.
has been great. Love tapping into
Love
a great
you.
mindset like yours.
I love you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been awesome.
Thanks for
I have
having
another
me.
2 hours for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going to start charging us.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Oh,
Really.
my pleasure. Yeah, thank you guys.